Welcome back. My name is Darren Thomas, and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this particular video, we're going to be looking at how to create multiple plots at the same time, simultaneously, if you will, using Bokeh, which is, of course, a part of Python. So let's go ahead and see what we can learn. So there's not a lot of new stuff in terms of like how to make the visualizations. Instead, what we're going to focus on is how to multiply them or make several at the same time. That is what's unique for this video. So we're going to go ahead and put in our libraries. That's the first thing we're going to do. And so here they go right here. So we're going to start with PyDataset. That's where our data is going to come from. Then we have two different functions we're going to be pulling from Bokeh. Figure, which is going to be coming from plotting, and output underscore file, and show, which comes from bokeh.io. And then, of course, we're going to need to use pandas for a little bit of data preparation, nothing major. So let's go ahead and set up our data here a little bit. And so we're going to be using the Duncan data set. Right here, I'll go ahead and show you guys what it looks like by putting in the head function. Whoops, forgot to load this first. Now we do this. All right, so here's the Duncan data set. We're just taking a quick peek at it. So the first column is telling you the name of the occupation. The second column is telling you the type of profession it is. It could be professional, or it could be white collar or blue collar. The next columns tells you like income, education, and prestige on a rating scale of 0 to 100. So that's nice and simple. Now we're going to go ahead and make our first plot so you can see how we do this. All right, so we're going to add another function here. This is from bokeh.layouts. It's the column function. This allows us to create columns. And so what we're doing here first is that we are setting up we are setting up our output file here, or our data set. So what we're doing is we're subsetting the white collars so that they're in their own object called white collars. So this is the code for that. Then below that, we're setting up another subset where we only pull the professionals, or the prof, P-R-O-F, from the Duncan data set. Now here in these two lines, we are creating two separate figures basically, because remember, we're going to make two separate figures. And so figure one is going to be the data for one of them. Again, it's going to be for white collars. And then figure two is going to be for the professionals. Then down here, we actually put in our actual data points right here. We're making a scatter plot in case I didn't say that already. And so figure one is going to be for the white collars. And so we're looking at education versus prestige, as already mentioned. Our source for this is our WC, that's our white collar data set. The color we're using is blue, that's what the line is going to be. And the legend is going to say WC, obviously. We repeat this process for the prof, or the PROF, or professionals right here. Then in the last two lines, we set up our output file so that we can see things, and then we show it. So let's go ahead and look at this, see what we got. All right. So you can see, now it's kind of small because I want to show both at the same time, but you can clearly see we have two different plots here. The top one is going to be the white collars, and the bottom one is going to be the professionals. And so, it's not that complicated. Now, there's lots of things we could have did, adding titles and legends and all kind of fancy stuff, but that's not our goal here. Our goal is to show you how you are able to make two plots simultaneously. Now let's move on to our next one. We're going to be looking at multiple bar plots here. And so we're going to go ahead and set that up. All right, this is a little bit more complicated. So we set up our rows right here. This time we're using a function called rows. Now here we had to do a little bit more data preparation, And so what we did here is that we calculated the mean for income. That's it. And so we grouped it by type. And so we have three different types: white collar, blue collar, and professional. And we just calculated the group mean for those. Same thing down here, we calculated the group mean for prestige. Right here, we had to make a list of our different types. The reason why will become clear in a second, but I'm going to use these to define my three different bars for each plot. Then right here, this is nothing new here. This is just setting up my figure, and I just call them income underscore type, prestige underscore type, because those are the two things I'm comparing: the type, whether it's blue collar, white collar, or professional, and their income. Those are the two axes for my plots. And then for the second one is now prestige and type. And again, this is pretty much a repeat of what we saw earlier. Now for the X range, this right here is defined by the types list that I made right here. Now I could have made a shortcut and just typed this, copied and pasted it right here, but I made an object instead. So that's what this is here for. This is telling me that we're going to have basically three different bars in our graph. Then down here, I actually add my data. And so that's where I have type and income. And then of course, this income object comes from up here when I calculated the group means for each job type. And then we repeat this again, of course, for prestige as well. All right. And so notice how I'm using my object that I created up here, and I'm just adding this method to the back of it right here. So now that we have seen this, let's go ahead and see what it actually looks like. All right. So we have our we have a row this time instead of a column, and we have two data sets, or excuse me, two data visualizations. And so the one over here to your left is going to be income, and the one to your right is going to be prestige. And as I already mentioned, notice how, of course, they were made simultaneously. And this, of course, has all of the interactive capabilities that are default with Bokeh. Of course, you can modify these as you desire. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. We got one more to do, I believe. Yes, grid plot. So let's go ahead and see what this one looks like. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. Now, grid plot allows you to set up the rows and the columns simultaneously. That's the main difference here in terms of what it's able to do. So instead of just saying, okay, I want one row or two rows, or I want three columns, I can set these things up as I desire, supposedly simultaneously. And so we're going to add the function grid plot. This comes from bokeh.layouts. And we're also going to add from bokeh.models column data source. This helps to prepare the data. As you can see right here in this line, column data source is a unique data type specific for Bokeh. Now, here we go. We create an empty list called plots, and then we got to do our for loop. So what I'm doing here is for type, that is going to come from in WC and WB. That's my list right there. And then I'm going to have my source here. So I'm going to set up my data. So my data is going to be DF, or my Duncan data set. And then I go through here and I pull DF by type. That's what I'm doing right here. And then I'm creating my figures as needed. So there's nothing to loop through here. I just make it the one time, education and income. And what's going to happen is I'm going to have these separated by the various types. Again, there's nothing to see here. Notice how I have the legend is by type. And that is going to be these two guys right here, blue collar and white collar. Now, this right here is something a little bit unique. Did I copy this in here? Where is that at? This might not work. So we have this numeral tick formatter. I'm going to remove this because I didn't put the code in here. Okay, then we got plots, and we're going to append it to the fig. So every time I make a plot, I'm going to append it. Then I have my output down at the bottom. Let's see here. There we go. Ah, nice and beautiful. So you can see here it made the two columns, the two data visualizations. So the first one is blue collar. You can see the data points right here. The second one is white collar. You can see the data points right here. Notice how there's only one interactive bar at the top. You can see that for yourself. And this is just one way how you can approach this. So what we've done here is we've learned 3 different ways that you can approach this. You can, of course, use the column function, however you decide if you want to do that, or you can use the row function. That's another potential way that you can set up your multiple data visualizations at the same time. And or you can also use the grid plot function as another way to approach this. And so you can just set up the number of columns and it will do things as appropriate. And so remember that when you're using grid plot, that you are also got to be aware of dealing with this for loop here. So you got to put your data inside it, source it. You got to separate it by type. That's very, very important as well. Then after that, you have to run the 2 figures here, and then you just append at the bottom, as you can see right there. And that's essentially it. So I want to thank you again so much for listening and watching this video. My name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Thank you again for watching, and you take care.